Welcome back to our podcast, Let's Talk About Labor. This podcast aims to help farmers and ag businesses connect with other ag businesses specifically to hear and learn about their experiences and challenges related to labor and the strategies they have used to overcome these challenges. We talk about various topics such as U.S. temporary foreign visa programs, mechanization and automation, and worker recruitment and retention strategies, among other topics. Different agencies and organizations have partnered with us to make this podcast possible, including the Southern Risk Management Education Center, Gap Connections, the U.S. Department of Agriculture SCRI program, and the Tennessee Department of Labor and Workforce Development. This podcast will not be possible without the participation of farmers and ag businesses. My name is Margarita Velandia, and I'm a professor in the Department of Agricultural and Resource Economics at the University of Tennessee.
And my name's Annette Wszelaki, and I'm a professor in the Department of Plant Sciences and the Commercial Vegetable Extension Specialist at the University of Tennessee.
So, we would like to introduce our guest for today's episode, Dana Ensor, owner of Grand Oak Farm in Jonesboro, Tennessee. She's also the president of Green Earth Connections, a consulting organization that works with agricultural and environmental organizations and agencies on issues related to agricultural, environmental, and local food production issues. Welcome back, Dana, and thank you for taking the time to talk with us today.
Thank you.
Today, we're gonna discuss farm internship programs. An internship is a form of experiential learning where a student has the opportunity to gain experiences that can assist the students in his or her career. Internships may be paid or unpaid. Since employees often undergo training of one sort or another, the distinction between an internship and an employment is not always straightforward. The U.S. Department of Labor provides guidelines to help employees distinguish between when they are hiring an intern and when they are hiring an employee for the purpose of the Fair Labor Standards Act. At the end of this episode, you will find links to publications that will help you better understand the differences between employees and interns, and other things you need to consider when employing interns in your farm operation.
So, Dana, we know that you had interns on your farm at some point. Could you talk about your decision-making process for using interns on your farm? And then tell us why you decided to use an internship program, how you identified the intern or interns you wanted to invite to get experience on your farm, and what process you had to follow before the interns arrived on your farm.
Sure. Thank you for being here today. And I did have interns on my farm. And the reason I wanted to look at this is I had worked for the Natural Resource Conservation Service for 34 years. We had interns within the government. So I was very aware of the intern process and how it could be beneficial to them. And I I wanted to have paid interns on the farm. And so this was opportunity for me to help create potential workforce and to help me and agriculture in general. I also always liked training employees, and my minor in college was agricultural education. So I could have taught vocational agriculture. So I liked that part of helping people learn more about agriculture and how to be efficient and effective. And I also knew the differences between an unpaid and paid intern and what an employee's and felt it was a good opportunity to help one of my employees grow as a supervisor because I was going to place this intern under my employee, and she had limited supervision. So I thought this would be good for her under my mentorship. I took several courses before I did this through nonprofits in our area on employee management that included interns, volunteers, apprentices, and employees. And I highly recommend people do that if they're interested in looking at this course of action because it is different than an employee. As mentioned by Marguerite, I highly recommend that part of this program is you understand the Fair Labor Standards Act, and you're going to get more information on that about having unpaid or paid interns. And basically, to put it into common words, there's 6 things that you kind of have to look at if you're having an intern. And this is when I finally found out that I was using the term incorrectly, because of the 6 things. The first one is, training must be provided that's similar to a classroom educational experience for these people while they're on your farm. And the farm really must not get any immediate advantage from the operation of an internship, because if you are gaining from them, they're an employee. The farm should have a separate staff whose primary job is to run that intern program, and that's why I was placing this under my employee. And it can't be a trial period for a future paid position. Otherwise, it's more of apprenticeship, and you should be paying them like that. The experience is for the benefit of them. It's really a disadvantage as for the employer many times. And they have to understand that the position is unpaid or paid. Many times it can be at less than the minimum wage because it's a learning experience. I did want to have paid interns, and I was very lucky to be part of a grant program with Appalachian Sustainable Development and Appalachian Resource Conservation and Development Program. They ran the program, and that's why I wanted to do it. And first, there was an extensive training program for both the mentors and the interns. There was manuals for each of us. Second, there was a hiring process that was run by them, along with an interview process that you participated in to help pick the person that was going to be on your farm. And third, they were paid by the organization, as well as we were paid to be mentors. So that was a little bit different. And fourth, there was a very large record keeping requirement that was on us that we did. And there were multiple evaluations of them, of the intern, of you, and of the program.
Um, so Dana, of course, it seems like you have had some experience with internship programs. And so I want you to tell us about, from your perspective, the benefits you received from having an intern on your farm and the challenges also you faced with the interns. And of course, also what strategies you use to overcome those challenges.
Sure. I'm going to start with the challenges because probably the biggest thing was scheduling. It was difficult since this was kind of a formal educational system, especially if they had other jobs or were in school. So communication was really key, and scheduling to make sure you're meeting both their needs. They needed to know more than what was just happening next week or next day. We tried to keep up a 2 or 3 week schedule that was posted so that people could see what was happening. So they knew when we had key times that we thought the intern should be there to learn something. So they weren't guessing, especially if something came up and they needed to take off. I still did require them to read and sign a farm employee manual that I had prepared. And we did refer to that many times if there were issues like uses of cell phones while they were working, or smoking, or any other issues that you wanted. I had them read this and sign it to say, yes, I've read, this is the rules if I'm working on your farm. Um, if they did get hurt, I did have a really good safety plan. Luckily, most of the times ours were minor cuts or bruises, but I did go out and get an additional, even though they were insured under this program. I went to the Farm Bureau. They had 100-man-year-day insurance program in case they were to get hurt on the farm. And I felt better by having that. Since this was a formal program, interns dropped out of it, and it was the role of the organization that was the sponsor to help us find somebody to fill that if we were lucky enough to have it early in the year. So that was nice having that formal program behind me. And finally, just remember, people are people. everybody has a bad day, including you. Be willing to say, I'm sorry. But also, be willing to have this communication, which is so key in working with other people on your farm, and not letting them have to guess what you're thinking or what they're supposed to be doing. And the benefits, oh my goodness, we met and helped and trained some really outstanding individuals, who went on in farming and some who didn't, but certainly knew more about their food by the time they got out of the intern program and where it comes from and what it takes to produce it. Most of the employment paperwork was handled by the organizations with the grants. So that was a benefit to having a sponsor who was having interns. And you will find there will be organizations that will look for farms to put interns on. So if you follow some organizations out there, nonprofits especially, many times they'll be looking for farms to put interns on. Um, some of the interns, had worked on other farms, and we actually learned from them. We learned some new skills, we learned some new strategies that we would not have known if they hadn't come to be on the farm. And, once the intern did go on, I had one that bought and operates a small farm fairly close to me. They were not from the area and fell in love with it after being on our farm, and we're still in touch today. So, there are a lot of great benefits if you like working with people and helping them learn more about agriculture and farming.
Excellent, Dana. You touch on something that I think is very important is if you like to work with people, right? Having an
Yes.
intern, right? Having somebody in your farm that you have to have the patience to educate, um, it's definitely something that you need to think about. Um, and Annette, I mean, for our audience, some of you might know, some of you might not know, and so I'm gonna switch it a little bit, Annette, because you're also a host, but you're kind of like a guest on this episode. So
Mhm.
before we go to our final thoughts, I want you to talk a little bit about the internship program that you run, and then I'm gonna go back to both of you, Dana and Annette, for you guys to give some final thoughts regarding internship program. So can you talk a little bit about the internship program, Annette, that you run through the University of Tennessee?
Sure. So at the UT Organic Farm, we had a CSA program for about 15 years, and we would recruit 5 interns per year. And they would have an educational component with a formal course, but then they would also have hands-on activities throughout the semester. And then when the spring semester was over, they would come and work on the farm full-time during the summer and get experience with growing as well as marketing, um, and other aspects of farming as well. So I think Dana touched on a lot of important points, and I think the more specific you as a grower can be when you're recruiting interns, the better off you'll be. Because oftentimes I have other growers that say, "Oh, can you find me a student?" And I'll say, "Okay, send me a description of what you're looking for." And I think that's a piece that people often skip over. And it's really crucial, as Dana said, that you have them look over what you're going to want them to do in advance because farming is hard work. And so you want them to be as prepared as possible when they come to your farm to know, at least on paper, what they're in for. Of course, that's going to differ once they're actually there and working in the heat for many days in a row. But the more specific you can be, the better off you'll be in the long run. And that goes for even down to what they're wearing in a day. Oftentimes they start out the summer with a tank top and shorts, and sometimes they show up in their sandals. And we have a very strict clothing policy on our farm because we have fire ants and we have black widows. And so we also have farming implements that can, hurt you in a heartbeat. So laying all those things out on the front end, having clear expectations, and then really highlighting, Dana also said this about finding what each person is good, what they like, and what they're good at, and really letting them kind of run with that little piece of your farm and giving them that ownership as part of your farm. We also had our interns each had a little project every summer. So they would think about what each one of them wanted to do, and they would kind of either try a new vegetable that we hadn't tried on the farm yet, or some other project they were interested in. Like one student was interested in biochar and kind of explored that. So really just giving them some ownership, but also honing their skills while they're there.
That's great, Annette. And then, so Dana, do you wanna, are there any final thoughts that might complement what Annette said? And then things that you think farmers need to consider when inviting an intern to gain experience on their farms?
Sure. Again, mainly understand what is a paid and unpaid internship according to the Fair Label Standards Act requirements. And there are employment laws in your state, there are federal employment laws. And for example, what's the minimum wage? And depending on, what your employment rules are in your state, most of the time you're required to follow the strictest. So you'll have to know which that is. Um, you need to understand the differences in interns and volunteers. Most people don't realize that volunteers can't be used on a for-profit farm. Because if they're actually helping you gain your bottom line, they're not volunteers, they're employees. And you should have this hiring contract no matter what kind of worker you have that sets out all the requirements of the business position along with this employee manual. But I can't overstate the need for training, a safety plan, and communication. That's key.
Well, this is great, and I guess I need to thank both Dana and Annette, because Annette it's a host, but became a guest a little bit because of her experience. So I guess thank you both for taking the time to talk to us today. Um, Thank you, everybody, and see you in the next episode.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.